How's it going, and welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I'm going to be talking about the safest wide receiver options on the draft board within the first 3 rounds of our 2021 fantasy football drafts. I'll talk about each and every one of these players in some detail, but just know, just because they're safe players doesn't mean I love drafting them at their ADP. I'll talk about that with each of these individual players and how I view them based off of their respective ADP. But nonetheless, these are the players I think are the most bust-proof in the sense that they might not all have the highest upside or have the best value where they're currently being picked at, but I think that you can't necessarily go wrong and ruin your draft board at the top with these names. So if you're new around here, make sure to head down, subscribe to the channel, and turn that bell on so you're notified whenever I come out with a new video. Let's hit the intro and get right into today's video. As we get started here today, another thing you need to make sure you have done is gone down and clicked the invite link in the description of this video to join the SFS community Discord. I'll be doing draft guide giveaways on there weekly. We've got one going on right now, and if you'd like to be entered into that, you just need to go join that group up and be somewhat active in there. So the first player on the board here, remember this is rounds 1 through 3, so ADP 1 through 36 overall based off of that 12-team league baseline that I use here on the channel. Tyreek Hill is my number 1 safest player while we're following this through ADP on the board. So Tyreek Hill right now has actually surpassed Davante Adams on the draft board for the wide receiver 1 overall. Based off of how the community consensus is feeling right now, Adams has been replaced, and he actually won't be making an appearance in this video. Tyreek Hill is the first name on this list. Obviously, Davante's got some question marks going on right now. I'm not too concerned about it, but for the sake of this video, I think it is fair to leave him off because whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, we don't know that right now. I think that that still degrades the level of safety that we can feel with drafting him, and he's actually slipped back to the back end of the first round, which I think is somewhat fair and actually presents a lot of great upside and value on draft day, but nonetheless, Hill's still a better option. When you've got Patrick Mahomes, when you've got the one-touch scoring threat ability that Tyreek Hill has, there's no reason not to put him on this board. He not only racks up the yardage, the target share, and the touchdown count you want to see out of him, but he has the perfect quarterback situation. The talent is off the charts, and he's put up a body of work since coming into the NFL that makes us feel really comfortable taking him here. He is one of these players. He's going in the mid-first round right now, the 8th overall draft pick on the head. Not something I feel too great about. I'm not really sure if I'd want to draft Tyreek Hill, and the volume isn't amazing, but again, he doesn't really need that elite volume. He doesn't need double-digit targets per game to put up these massive numbers because he can score 75 yards out in a blink of an eye and rack up 13 fantasy points in one play. So that's not something I'm overly concerned about, but the draft capital is not something I love to do. I'd rather invest my capital into a running back with high upside, with that top-end RB1 upside at the top of my draft boards. Nonetheless, I think that if you're looking for a safe pick and you'd rather not lose your fantasy league with your first overall pick, barring injury, Tyreek Hill is going to be that guy for you. And if you want to take him right after the back half of that first round in those 12-team leagues, I certainly can't fault you for doing so. It's just not something I personally love doing. The next player up on this list, DeAndre Hopkins, might be one of the most safe year-round picks in fantasy football leagues. I actually picked him in the first round. All my running backs went off the board a couple years back when he was in his final year with the Texans, actually, I believe. It was 2018. All the backs I wanted fell off the board, so I ended up picking up D-Hop and then Melvin Gordon in the second round. That worked out pretty well, and that stack ended up winning me my championship based off of the other waiver wire acquisitions and whatnot I was able to build my team through. But D-Hop is simply one of the best there is out there. He's still in the conversation for being the best wide receiver in the National Football League. I think that he's in the back end of his prime right now. He's entering into his early 30s. He's still got a few years left, certainly, and I love the situation he has in this offense. That's why this year I think you still can't go wrong with him in your leagues. He was actually a 1,400-yard receiver last year, 115 receptions. He finished second in the National Football League in targets with 160, only behind Stefon Diggs, who will be the next player up on this list. But when you talk about that type of target volume, the elite quarterback play he has in Kyler Murray, I think that he's only continuing to get better. He literally has improved every phase of his game through his first 2 years in the league. So year 3, I expect him to be that much better and even more so elite than he was before that. So Hopkins has a great quarterback. throwing the football to him. I think that when you talk about a player who has a ridiculous 71.9% catch rate, that is unheard of. D-Hop has some of the best hands in the league, and when you throw him the football, he does not drop it and rarely lets the ball hit the ground for a simple incompletion. Like, you could throw him a just awful football, and chances are he's probably still going to come down with the ball. As you see, nearly 3/4 of his targets are hauled in as receptions. So he does have a tough division that he plays in. He's got to play Jalen Ramsey twice a year, but I'd actually argue that of all the wideouts in the National Football League, DeAndre Hopkins has the best body of work against Ramsey throughout their careers. So I feel really great about this pick. It's not super flashy. If you want to take D-Hop right now, he's going in the early second. I'm fine with that. Again, I would rather invest draft capital into taking one of those running backs that can give me those league-winning numbers, but D-Hop, he's not going to lose you your league, and for the reasons I talked about, he is an ultra-safe pick who gives you great production, so I would feel decent about taking D-Hop there. Stefon Diggs right now is going as the ADP wide receiver 4, taken again just behind D-Hop in the early second round of fantasy drafts. Josh Allen plus Stefon Diggs is magic, and these two put up ridiculous numbers. You saw last year, Diggs led the National Football League in yardage, and he was first in targets just ahead of DeAndre Hopkins with 168. Diggs was also the best route runner in the National Football League last year, and via Matt Harmon's reception perception, he actually set a record for success rate versus man coverage where he beat that 82.6% of the time. So he essentially got open literally over 80% of the time he ran routes. So you talk about a guy who plays in the AFC East against Stephon Gilmore twice a year, Xavier Howard. It doesn't matter. He is still finding a way to separate from defensive backs at the highest level, play in, play out. Josh Allen's arm strength allows him to stretch the field whenever he wants to. He can blow by almost any defender in the league. Diggs is an absolute animal and a monster, and I would be shocked to see if his touchdown volume didn't go up this season. Only 6 for DeAndre Hopkins last season. Stefon Diggs, I believe he only had 7. So we're talking about players who certainly have a lot more room to grow with these last two players on the board here, and are certainly very, very desirable picks that are not going to make your floor suffer in your fantasy lineups this season. So Stefon Diggs, I think, is a great value at wide receiver 4. You see he finished as wide receiver 3 last year, but being picked one spot behind that this year. Definitely a player with super high upside and a great floor, so I would love this draft pick. If he falls to me in the middle of the second round, I'm scooping him up every single time. Calvin Ridley, the value honestly gets better here as these players fall down the board. He's being taken right now as wide receiver 7. We've got names like DK Metcalf, who didn't make this list for the simple fact that I want to see more volume out of Metcalf's game. I want to see him get more than his typical reception total is only between 4 and 6. And is he ultra productive with those targets and those receptions he gets? Absolutely he is. But I think we'd still feel a lot better if we saw Metcalf getting 7, 8, and having more of those double-digit reception performances, because I believe that while his efficiency might take a slight toll from an increased workload, he's still going to be a player that's going to be incredibly effective with those touches. And for a player of his talent, his physique, his skill level, he's going to blow the top off of fantasy leagues if he gets that opportunity, but it's just not something we've seen the first 2 years. Calvin Ridley, on the other hand, is a player that we've seen get elite volume. He played 9 games with Julio Jones last season, still had a ridiculous amount of targets, 143 of them to be exact. And again, 9 games with Julio Jones. He was banged up in and out of the lineup, but he produced at wide receiver 1 and high upside 1 at that wide receiver 4 finisher last year. He showed us he can get the job done whether he's there or not. So Calvin Ridley can absolutely handle the top cornerback, the top defensive coverage from the opposing team. He'll get open. He'll find his space. The Falcons are still a bad football team, in my opinion. I think that defense is going to be better than it was last year, but they're still going to be giving up points. The Falcons don't really have an established run game either. If you think Mike Davis is going to be the end-all, be-all solution to that rushing attack and get that team rolling, become more balanced, I don't think that you would be correct by saying that. I think that Mike Davis is the same situation, maybe even a lesser one, than Todd Gurley was last season. He's going to be your goal line producing back, your big body that'll bull defenders down and ultimately cap off drives with touchdowns in the red zone, but he's not going to put up efficient rushing numbers. He's not going to be having 100-yard scrimmage games left and right. He might crack 100 yards on the ground a few times this season, but he plays in a division. Tampa Bay, New Orleans is still very respectable in their run stop ability. They're going to have to be passing the football. Matt Ryan needs somewhere to go with the football. Yes, they have Kyle Pitts. I think Russell Gage is a very under-the-radar sleeper in play this season, but Calvin Ridley is the man in this offense. He is the best pass-catching and skill player on this football team at the moment. Kyle Pitts can surpass him in a year or two, but being a rookie tight end, I think we've got some adjustment curve to have there, and I think that scooping up Ridley in the late second is an absolute steal on draft day and one of the safest choices you can make at this spot. Justin Jefferson up next here. You talk about a rookie who gets 125 targets when his team already has an established wide receiver one in the offense, and he nearly doubles his yardage after catch production. Justin Jefferson is a different animal. This player is a guy that has the capability to put up... I would argue that Justin Jefferson has top 3 fantasy wide receiver potential. He only started 14 games last season, and he had 1,400 yards on the season. So if he take out the production that he had, and this is playing with numbers a little bit here, but if let's just say that those 2 starts that he didn't have at the beginning of the year, you take those out of the picture and just put him in those 14 games, 14 starts, 1,400 yards, that's 140 yards per game. So he's not going to do that again. He's not going to average 140 yards per contest. But the point being that when you're so young and raw to the NFL, he came in and it looked like he'd been in the league for 4, 5, 6 years with his route running, his ability after the catch. He's really savvy, and this is a very, very special player. The Vikings are centered around Dalvin Cook. They want to be a run-first football team, but there is so much upside, so much potential here. And again, a rookie player in 14 starts, seeing 125 targets and outdoing Adam Thielen. I think he only had 108. That's crazy potential. If he sees that number get closer to 130, 140, maybe even 150. Again, this is a run-first team, so I don't know if they have that potential to have that much volume in the passing game in this offense. You're still looking at a player that's going to be incredibly good with the opportunities he gets, and those targets per game are pretty nice as well. So Justin Jefferson, you're looking at a late second, potentially early third-round pick. You can't go wrong with him here, and I think that his ADP has slipped, and there's other players being taken ahead of him that aren't as much of a secure draft pick, so that's why he makes the list here. Last 2 names on the board here, Keenan Allen. This one's obvious. Third-round pick, mid-third-round pick. These next 2 guys are some of my favorites. This is the territory, I believe, where you need to start taking the wide receivers very seriously because these guys absolutely have top 12 finishing capabilities. And if everything goes right, they could finish in the top 6. Keenan Allen's got one of the best young up-and-coming quarterbacks in the National Football League, that, of course, being Justin Herbert. And you talk about a player who's had 4,000-yard seasons in his NFL career. The last 4 years in a row, he's seen over 136 targets. The touchdown numbers aren't even that insane for Keenan Allen. He really hasn't done much. He doesn't have the body of work to show that he's going to be a red zone monster and put up double-digit touchdown receptions every year. But if he can linger around 8 to 10 touchdowns, this guy's going to be putting up monster numbers, and for the amount of targets, the volume he sees in this offense, he's the clear-cut, unquestioned wideout number 1 in this Chargers offense. And when you've got a quarterback, like I said, in Justin Herbert, who's that talented, that good outside the pocket, making improv plays downfield, this is a fantasy dream scenario, and the value that we get out of him here is ridiculous. So, Keenan, please draft him in the 3rd round. If you set yourself up well, get 2 super high upside running backs, rounds 1 and 2, and come back and pick a Keenan Allen or this next guy, Allen Robinson, up on your draft boards, you are looking really, really good to start off that league year. And here you go. A-Rob is the last player we're going to talk about today. What more do I need to say about Allen Robinson? I praise him ad nauseum here on the channel. I talk about Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen nonstop. I just did an ADP battle on them last season where their ADP is separated by less than a pick and a half, so essentially I just broke down their situation. I'll, of course, have that linked in the description of this video, and there should be a tag some point in here where you can just click on that at the top of your screen and then come back to this video later if you'd like to. But nonetheless, Robinson and Allen, 3rd-round receivers, so close. Their floors are amazing. That's what their whole fantasy value has been predicated on for the last few years now. The targets, the volume they see. We haven't really seen them fulfill and maximize their ceilings quite yet, which I think they have the utmost capability of doing so in the best situation to make that happen this year as opposed to any other year in their careers. But they're still absolute amazing picks here just because we know that floor is already going to be there. Again, barring injury like all these players, unless something crazy happens to them, they're going to come out here and put up really good numbers. He's got Andy Dalton coming in to play quarterback at the start of the season. Justin Fields should take over by mid to late year, and I think that that's ultimately what's going to unlock A-Rob's ceiling here. So, again, he was picked here last year. We talked about it being a crazy value pick that time, this time last year when he only had Foles and Trubisky throwing him the ball. just imagine all of the extra damage he can do with increased quarterback play and the same amount of workload in that Bears offense. There you have it. Those were 7 wide receivers who I think are incredibly safe draft choices in the first 3 rounds of 2021 fantasy football leagues. Again, I don't love all these players at their current ADP, but a lot of them are excellent picks and are players you can't go wrong with at this spot. So one more time before I head out today, remember to head down in the description of this video, click that invite link to the SFS community Discord, and get yourself hooked up with an exclusive and personalized fantasy analysis. You can always put your questions down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you there, of course. But that Discord is an even easier way to get a hold of me. Send me pictures of your lineup, screenshots, whatever it is. I can help you set you up with some SFS community leagues, get you involved with other players who are watching the channel, and get you set up to compete against them and prove you are the best fantasy player out there for the 2021 season. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I will see you all tomorrow. Peace out.